Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week in Shul we will be reading Parshat Behaalotcha, which has a number of different themes. The one I want to talk about today is the Tabernacle, the instructions for which were given way back in the book of Exodus in great detail. We have now sort of a description of that tabernacle being set up and prepared to move. And we are reminded of what we were told towards the end of the book of Exodus, that on the day that the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the pact. And in the evening it rested over the tabernacle in the likeness of fire until morning. Now there's two questions I want to explore in this text. One is, if there was a cloud of fire in the evening and a pillar of fire in the evening and a pillar of cloud in the morning, how did they know it was the same God? How could God be both the form of a pillar of fire or the form of a pillar of cloud? How did they know that it was one God? At the time, in the places where they're living, that would seem to be two gods. And as Jewish history progresses, we live in places where, like the Zoroastrians believed in two gods, a God of good and evil. Maybe the cloud is good and the fire is evil. But they understand that that this is one God, and that the cloud and the fire must have some other purpose. Now, obviously, the fire would be seen more easily at night. But the commentators on this passage, which is Numbers 9, verse 15, they ask the question and they struggle with it. And they glean an answer from the recitation of the Shema. Right? We say the Shema in the morning and we say the Shema in the evening, and it's the same Shema. So the question is, why? Shouldn't we have a different prayer for the morning and a different prayer for the evening? And he says, this is Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin, that when it's morning, this is a metaphorical morning as well, in that the sun is shining brightly and we feel good and everything is great. We say, "Hear, you Jewish person, hear, O Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Right? God's strength is pushing us forward in this beautiful day and the success in the journey. But even at night, when things are bad, right? When we're not sure what the next day is going to look like, when we're anxious, when we are not sure where to turn, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We affirm our faith, and God is with us in our grief or our isolation, hopefully to return us to good. I was really intrigued by this interpretation, in part because I think it's very true. We find ourselves now, many of you have come to me and said these are dark times. Right? And I get it. There's a lot of foreboding, a lot to be anxious about. And the question is, where is God during these times? And I know people have different impressions or understandings of who or what God is. But God is still an important concept. Even people who don't believe in God think a lot about God, particularly at difficult times. So I wanted to share a story. You may have heard it before, but it bears repeating, oft told in Israel or in Jerusalem by Israeli tour guides, about a king who wants to marry his daughter, actually doesn't want to marry his daughter off. Maybe she doesn't want to get married. I don't remember exactly how it goes. But basically, he puts a riddle out into the world and says, if you want to marry my daughter, you need to bring me something that is both the most wonderful thing that you can hear and the worst thing that you can hear. And so there's a big competition. It goes on for a long time. And finally, the king's advisor, one savvy, clever young person, comes back. Let's say there was a year to figure it out, and finally comes back after searching all over the land at the end of the year. He meets a wizened older person in the precincts of the city, and he says, "Ugh, I'm so depressed. I'm not going to finish the challenge in time." And he says, "Here, take this ring and bring that to the king, and you'll win the contest." And so he comes back, and he gives the ring to the king. He says, "King, this is it. This is the answer, the best thing you can hear and the worst thing that you can hear." And it says on the ring, "Gam ze ya'avor." Right? This too shall pass. When we're in the morning, in the sunshine of the goodness of our lives, it's the worst thing we can hear. Gam ze ya'avor. All times can't be like that. And when we're in the evenings and the nights, the anxiety-ridden, perhaps depressed or depressing, isolating, difficult times of life, so too, Gam ze ya'avor, there's the happiest thing we can hear, that this too shall pass. The point is that times change, and our needs in those times change. But coming back to our question, God is a constant. It's not that God changes from cloud to fire, or that God is even really cloud or fire. But this idea of God, this essence of holiness and spirit in the world, is with us all the time. Our needs change, and therefore our relationship changes. Sometimes on a sunny, bright day, a cloud is nice. It provides shade. It provides shelter. It's good to know the presence is there and to be grateful for the good things. And sometimes at night, we need the fire. We need the fire to guide our way. We need the fire to protect us, like the pillar of fire that comes between the Egyptians and the Jews at the Red Sea. Sometimes we even need the fire to fight our battles, like when Elijah fights the prophets of Baal and calls a divine fire from the heavens. What is magnificent and important to recognize in our relationship with God is God is constant. But as our needs change, the way God manifests in our lives changes as well. We kind of know this in the back of our heads. We hear, there's no atheist in a foxhole, which may or may not be true. I'm not, but why is that? Because you can deny God, but when death is on the line, suddenly you might recite a prayer. You might not know who you're reciting the prayer to or what that looks like, but that is just our need to recite a prayer. And when things are good, maybe we don't recognize God as much. And maybe we need to give a little more thanks in those moments to see the cloud that's sort of giving us shade and providing us with these good moments. And so the cloud or the pillar was ever present. God is ever present, both when the tabernacle was set up and obviously beyond so. And whether we are experiencing the daylight, the mornings of our lives, or the dark depth of night, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Our God is one and with us. But even more beautifully than, a religion that holds that there's many gods with one attribute for each god, we can have a real relationship with an entity that's hard to understand. And let's face it, people are hard to understand too. We have relationships with them that is always there, always a constant in our lives. May we be able to feel that presence in the good times and experience less of the bad times, but feel that presence in the bad times as well. And may we bring support to each other to help represent during those bad times and help us all move forward into the morning and the sunshine ahead. Shabbat Shalom.